So now that we've gone over the interface, working with the units, importing a CAD geometry file, let's have a look at the final part, which is the engineering data application. So to start it up, let's begin by double-clicking on cell number 2, Engineering Data. So the engineering data application is where you can provide controls for all your material properties within ANSYS Workbench. So right in the center of engineering data, we can see something called Outline of Schematic A2. So this is where all of our materials will go for our specific project that we've created called Lifting Lug Tutorial. Now as you can see here, there is no materials that are specified, and ANSYS asks us to click here to add a new material. Instead of making our own new material by clicking here, you can go and click on this tab called Engineering Data Sources. By clicking on this tab, you will see the whole ANSYS library of different types of materials you can use for your project. You can also think of this as a list of preset materials. So in order to get more space here, let's go and close the Messages toolbox here at the bottom by clicking on this X button. So, in engineering data sources, you have general materials, some nonlinear materials, explicit materials for high-speed impact dynamics, thermal materials and fluid materials, and even composite material preset libraries for you. Now by default, the general materials is selected. And once it's selected, you can see over here the outline of general materials. So this is the whole library of general materials given to you by ANSYS. So here on the left you have the materials such as air, aluminum alloy, concrete. And under column B you have the option to add this to your engineering data project. So by clicking on this button, this will add this material to your project view. Now the properties box below gives you the details of the material that's selected in the outline. So let's go ahead and select aluminum alloy. And as you can see here, the properties for outline row 4, aluminum alloy, are displayed right here. So you have the density, you have the Young's modulus, you have the yield strength and the ultimate strength, etc. And to the top right here, you have the property table, and just below it, the property chart. Now these two windows give you more detail about the property that you selected here in Properties of Outline. So here the density is selected by default, and in the property table you have the density and you have another column which shows the temperature. If the temperature is not specified, then you can see in the property chart window that the default is 0. Now let's say you want to modify a list of preset material libraries. You can go into the Engineering Data Sources view again, and under column B you'll see this little pencil icon. Now by checking one of these checkboxes, you can go ahead and now edit this material list. Now if you made the changes to this material list and you want to save it, you can go into column C and click on this button here to save your materials as a new XML file, and you can send it to a colleague or for technical support. And if you want to import a list of general materials, you can go and scroll down to the bottom here and click on this button to open an existing data source from a file. Now let's add structural steel to our project. So go into the Outline of General Materials window and let's scroll down till we find structural steel. So there we have it, structural steel. So we're going to click on this yellow plus sign to add it to our project. So once we've clicked on that, we can go now and click on the Engineering Data Sources toggle to go back into our project window, and now we can see here in the outline of A2 we have structural steel now in our project. So once added, we can now choose to modify the default properties of the structural steel in this window here. So we can go and bring this up, and now you can see that all these fields in column B are editable. So let's say you want to go and edit the density, you can double click on this value and you can erase it and edit it. And let's say you wanted to change the Young's modulus, you can also change the units for each individual property. So you can click on this Pascal here drop down menu and choose, let's say, megapascals. And then now you have it in 2e to the 5 megapascals. So once again you can double click on this and you can modify the material as you wish. Now ANSYS doesn't include all the properties that you might need for your analysis. So that's why there's this toolbox here on the left. This toolbox gives you all the properties that you can possibly need to define a material in ANSYS. So let's say for structural steel, we can go into, let's say, linear elastic properties, And as you can see, isotropic elasticity is grayed out. This means that it's already part of our material property, and we can find it right here in row 6, isotropic elasticity. Now, if let's say we wanted to add a different property and not make it isotropic but orthotropic, we can, let's say, click on this, drag it into any one of these rows and let go. Now, as you can see, this overrides the isotropic elasticity property because now it is being defined as an orthotropic elasticity property. And this question mark means that you have to define some more parameters before continuing. So if you click on this plus sign here, you can see that now you can have all these parameters to define in each different direction for this type of property. So let's go ahead and remove this by right-clicking and deleting it. And then let's unsuppress the isotropic elasticity using this column here. So by default, if you add in a new material, ANSYS will suppress it, but we want to now unsuppress it to get it back. So let's click on that. Now you can see the line is undone in this, and so that means it's unsuppressed. Let's say you had a nonlinear analysis to do. You can go back into engineering data sources, and you can, let's say, go into general nonlinear materials, and let's move this down a little bit. And you can go and choose let's say, stainless steel nonlinear material or structural steel nonlinear material. And as you can see here, it has a bilinear isotropic hardening parameter. So this is the nonlinear curve for this material. So this is a default in ANSYS again if you're doing a nonlinear analysis. However, let's say you wanted to add something more complex and add, let's say, a multilinear stress-strain curve. Well, let's go back and uncheck engineering data sources and click on structural steel. We can go now into plasticity models and choose, let's say, a multilinear isotropic hardening property and drag it into our properties outline. And now, as you can see, I'm going to bring this window up, and now we have our multilinear isotropic hardening, and it asks us to fill out this table. And this table on the right is essentially the stress-strain curve for this material. So we can go and put, let's say, 0.001 and put a stress of 250, and then let's say 0.002, and let's say 255, and etc., etc. And here you can add, you can keep going until, let's say, 0.2 millimeters per millimeters, and then say 256. And then here you have your custom multilinear stress-strain curve. So for this tutorial, we're not going to be using nonlinear materials, but this is just to give you an idea of how to use the toolbox. Now you may have noticed this button called Filter Engineering Data. This is just a toggle button that when selected, filters out all the material properties that are not relevant to the current study. So since we're doing a static structural analysis, you can see that all the other models are hidden. So if I uncheck this right now, you will see that it shows us all the different types of material models for any type of project. And now it added some magnetic materials and some electric material properties. And as you know, these are properties that we're not going to use in our project. So let's go ahead and keep that checked on and only have relevant properties for our project. Now getting back to the properties outline, let's go and remove this multilinear isotropic hardening property. Click on delete. And now we're back to our general structural steel material. Finally, you can also add materials by clicking on this area here where it says click to add new material. So let's say you don't want to use a default material and you want to make your own material from scratch. You can click on this and you can define something, let's say, called new material, and hit enter, and this will define a new material for you. And as you can see in the properties, you have absolutely no properties here. So you would have to go and add them yourself. So let's say we go into the basic properties, you can add density, double click on it or drag it in. We can add, let's say we can enter this value as 7850, and then we can go and add a linear elastic isotropic property and drag that into the first field here. And then you can, etc., and you can make your own material this way. Now, something else that you might notice is this column B here. This could just change the color of your material. So during the analysis, if you want to show the model by color, you can use this here to define different colors to different materials. So that completes the engineering data tab. I'm just going to go and delete this new material because we will not be using it for a project, and we'll just be keeping structural steel for now. So let's click on the X button to quit out of engineering data and back into our project. So once back into our project, you can see here now the engineering data tab has a green check mark, which means it's updated. So there's a quick overview of the ANSYS interface. Let's continue to my next lesson, where we will go over building our first 3D model in Geometry Modeler.